Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony, which today commemorates the 76th anniversary of the victory in Europe, Second World War. Tonight, we will hear the story of Lieutenant Henry Wykeham Freame, who lost his life on this day in 1945 while serving for Australia in the Second World War. My name is Tristan Rullings, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Group Captain Ernie Walsh. We warmly welcome Air Commodore Retired Peter McDermott, representing Air Force Association, Wing Commander Michael Garside, Australian War Memorial Air Force Fellow, and the contingent of Army Reserve Officer Cadets, Sydney University Regiment. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families who love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Catapult party, attention! Catapult party, Present.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free, with golden soil and wealth for toil. Our home is good by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. Enjoy from strange land, let us sing. Advance Australia fair.
Catapult party. Shoulder. Out. Catapult party. Order. Out.
If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of the more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations over more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Henry Wykeham Freame. He was born on the 5th of December 1921 in Uralla, New South Wales, the son of Henry and Edith Freame. His father was an adventurer, soldier, orchardist and interpreter, believed to have been born in Osaka, Japan, though he gave his birthplace as Canada when he enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force during the First World War. Freame Sr. was awarded one of the AIF's first Distinguished Conduct Medals for displaying the utmost gallantry in taking water to the firing line, although twice hit by snipers. And he was mentioned in dispatches for his work at Monash Valley in June. Charles Bean described him as probably the most trusted scout at Anzac. Discharged as medically unfit, the older Freame settled on the Kentucky estate in New England, New South Wales, where he became a successful orchardist. With the outbreak of the Second World War, he offered his services to the Australian military forces and in December 1939 was planted by military intelligence as an agent amongst the Japanese community in Sydney. In September 1940, he was appointed as an interpreter on the staff of the first Australian legation to Tokyo. He returned to Australia early in 1941 because of ill health and died in May. His son, Henry Freame Jr., enlisted in the militia in late October 1941. The following year, a police report from Uralla stated that he was a good citizen and definitely loyal to the British Empire. He is not known to speak the Japanese language and, so far as it is known, has not visited Japan. Freame served with the 33rd Battalion until enlisting in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force in August 1942, rising to the rank of Sergeant with the Australian Provost Corps. He entered the Royal Military College Duntroon on the 27th of March 1943, and when he graduated in April 1944, he was Colour Sergeant of the Corps of Staff Cadets. He was appointed as a lieutenant the following day, and by December 1944 had transferred to the 2nd 24th Battalion. By then, the battalion had defended Tobruk and fought at El Alamein in North Africa before facing Japanese forces in the Pacific, fighting around Lae, Finschhafen and Suttleberg in New Guinea. The battalion had then remained in Australia for almost a year, training on the Atherton tablelands and receiving a large number of reinforcements. In April 1945, the battalion was committed to Operation Oboe, the Allied campaign to retake Borneo and Java, tasked with capturing the island of Tarakan. The amphibious assault on Tarakan began on the 1st of May. Despite difficult coastal approaches, minefields and strongly fortified defences, the landing was a success. Naval and air bombardment before the landing and then naval gunfire support once ground forces were ashore neutralised most resistance. Heavy fighting ensued as Japanese defenders fought to hold on to the position, and the Australians were held up for 3 days. Following this, they pushed into the rugged terrain inland, fighting a series of actions to secure the high ground overlooking the township. This fighting lasted until the 20th of June, when Hill 90 was finally taken. The Oboe series of operations were some of the most controversial fought by Australian troops during the war. Many senior Australian officers considered them strategically unsound and felt that they contributed little to the defeat of Japan. 225 Australians were killed as a result of the Tarakan campaign. As a proportion of the number of troops involved, it was the most costly of the Oboe operations. Among the dead was Lieutenant Henry Wykeham Freame, who was killed in action on the 8th of May 1945. He was 23 years old. Elsewhere, this day marked the formal acceptance by the Allies of Germany's unconditional surrender of its armed forces, marking the end of the Second World War in Europe. For Australian troops in Borneo, however, the end would not come for some time. In the aftermath of the campaign, Australian personnel would remain in Borneo until late 1945, restoring civilian administration, overseeing reconstruction efforts, supervising the surrender of Japanese troops, and liberating former prisoners of war. Today, Henry Freame's remains lie in Labuan War Cemetery under the Latin inscription Fortia Fideliter Feliciter, which means bravely, faithfully and happily. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Henry Wykeham Freame, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Apple party, shoulder, arms.
If you are able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Apple party, present, arms. Apple party, shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Apple party, in words, turn. Apple party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.